Hello, my name is Maxime Benvenuto. I'm a designer based in Eindhoven, and I recently graduated from the Design Academy Eindhoven. In January of this year, we got given the theme of peace and justice as a topic for one of our graduation projects. And almost immediately I said that I didn't want to work on that topic because I was really afraid, because it's such a big topic and so complicated, that I would end up with a shallow project that would not make any contributions. And on the other hand, also 2 months before that were the attacks in Paris. And I could see how my country was reacting to these attacks, declaring the state of emergency, reducing liberties, and also emphasizing the rise of nationalism and populism, which are not my definition of peace and justice. And now I can realize that it was quite stupid of me not to want to work on that topic, because actually that's when your values are threatened, that you have to react and do something about it. But eventually one of my tutors convinced me to come here to The Hague and to visit different institutions to see if there would be something I can do or I can work on. And at some point, we came to visit the Peace Palace, and we went through the visitor center where we discovered the whole history of the building. And I got really touched by how much hope people did put into building this building all together, bringing wood from a country, bringing the stone from another one, and all together to build it up. And then we had also the opportunity to meet some people who work for the International Court of Justice, which is located in the Peace Palace, and which is an organ from the United Nations. And I got even more surprised by how much hope these people still have in working on a daily basis on trying to achieve global peace. So when I got back in Eindhoven, I initiated a research on hope. What is hope? How does our brain create hope, and how do we deal with it? And I did this through the fields of psychology, philosophy, and neuroscience. And I discovered actually that hope is a quite irrational feeling, because our brain is programmed to find solution. And even when it doesn't know what the solution is, then it will make up a solution. And hope is part of these made-up solutions. And therefore, that's how you end up with some people sometimes wearing an old, dirty t-shirt when their soccer team is playing, and that they believe that the fact that they wear this t-shirt will help their team winning. So I was surprised that such irrational feeling was at the very beginning of what created complicated and big institutions such as the United Nations. And I realized that, yes, there is this irrational beginning, but that then they make everything tangible by supporting this irrational feeling with the most rational texts, which are the international laws, the pacts, and the treaties. So I started to work with this duality of irrational and rational, and therefore I took some of the main texts of international laws, pacts, and treaties, and looked for the irrational elements that were left in it. So for the human values, for the symbols. And I found a lot of them, and eventually I could reduce them to 5 main values, which are, on top of them, there is the concord, which is better than the peace, because it's the peace achieved through the union of humans. And it's allowed by the second value, which is the protection, which is, of course, physical protection, but also social protection, health protection, and psychological protection, so that one in society may feel safe at all levels. So it's not only about putting policemen in the streets. And then from these, we result 3 values: the liberty, the dignity, and the equality. Now, when we were at the UN, the person told us that UN is really often stuck in political debates, because the countries who go to UN go there with their political troubles, and discuss it there, and therefore get the politics of peace slowed down. So I thought, instead of only bringing the countries to UN, why couldn't we bring UN into the countries? And using these 5 values of concord, protection, liberty, dignity, equality, I proposed that we could make a Ministry of Humanism which would be embedded into each member state. And it would be a ministry which would be partly UN and partly governmental, so that politics of peace gets put back at the heart of the governments. And then a ministry is defined by 2 things: a law and a space. So first thing I started to do is to write the law of this ministry, which I have here. You can read it after. And so I defined the aims of this ministry, the role of the ministers, the national, international engagements, and so on. And so, for instance, one of the main tasks of the ministry is to keep constructing and deconstructing knowledge about these 5 values of concord, protection, liberty, dignity, and equality. And by keep defining them, undefining them, redefining them, de-defining them, that would bring the ministry to keep questioning these notions, and also to keep questioning how to put them into actions. And then on the other side, a ministry is also defined by a space where people work, and a space that induces specific behaviors to the people. So therefore, I proposed an architectural program for this ministry, an open architectural program, which also includes an approach of interior design and furniture design. And I made it open because if this ministry is to be integrated in every country, then every culture has to be able to make it its own. Because at first I started to design everything, to design every piece of furniture, every plant in the garden, or things like this. But then I realized that as a designer, the best I could do was to just disappear as much as possible from the project, in order that each country may be able to create this ministry with its own cultural, social, economical, and political context. And so now I propose you to just watch the video of the program from the architecture that I proposed.
The Ministry of Humanism is conceived around a program composed of 6 open parameters. First, as written in the law on the Ministry of Humanism, each ministry must have a documentation center open to the public. The documents it contains are the foundations of the approach to human well-being and peace that is at the heart of the reflection of the ministry. It is therefore logical that this element finds its place at the base of the site, becoming in this way the physical and mental foundation of the ministry, supporting thoughts and acts. Secondly, when one enters the site of the Ministry of Humanism, his progression through the space should never lead him to rise above, but on the contrary, to go down into the ground. In this way, the further one goes, the lower he will get. The more in the ground, the more connected to reality, the more open-minded. Third, the public access must be separated by a garden. This garden should not escape the logic of the site. Therefore, it should be a low garden, which keeps a strong relation with the ground it is in. The choice of plants will thus be orientated towards endemic species that have horizontal development. Fourth, the seats should also not escape the principle of proximity with the ground. The closer to the ground one sits, the more the mind will open, and the slower the pace will become, allowing a certain level of discussion. Therefore, all seats within the ministry should not go over 14 centimeters in height. Fifth, In order to reinforce the opening of the minds and discussions within the ministry, walls and all forms of partitions should be prohibited. Finally, in order to have discussions or exchanges while avoiding dominating feelings due to the low seats, and in order as well to signify the diverse spaces without partitions, the rooms will be elevated so that one sitting at his post will find himself at approximately the same eye level as someone standing by the room. In this way, both people would have a discussion at equal level, without any feelings of domination or submission due to the other constraints of the site.
So this is the project. And as a conclusion, I just would like to say that in the end, I'm really glad that I worked on this project, even though I was really afraid. Because I discovered that the legal system is not so far from the design thinking logic. We all try to think how our society is working and how we can shape its daily life. So I believe that it's actually would be quite a good thing if in the future designers and people who work in the legal system work more together, because I think we can do a lot. Thank you.